I never thought I'd be writing something like this. I always pictured my marriage as one of those stable, affectionate, maybe even a little boring unions that last forever. My wife, Emma, and I had been together since college, got married 5 years ago. We were the kind of couple people envied, both working in good jobs, me in graphic design, her in marketing, cute apartment in a decent neighborhood, weekend rituals of cooking dinner or watching TV, vacations scattered through the year. Nothing flashy, but solid. That was my reality until about a month ago. It started innocently, or so I thought, when Emma began having these late nights at work. At first, it seemed plausible. She had just taken on a big campaign, and her boss was demanding. She'd say, "I'll probably be home late tonight, babe," and I'd shrug it off. "Okay, I'll heat up something when you get back," I'd say, typing away at my latest freelance job. But then the late nights multiplied, and I started noticing little things. A lipstick stain on her scarf when she got in at midnight, her phone screen lighting up in the hallway, and her stiffening when she saw me, extra passwords on her laptop that she told me were just for work. I'm not proud of what I did next. I was scared, confused, but most of all, insecure. I opened her email when I thought she was out. Nothing obvious. I poked around her message threads. Still nothing. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was paranoid, a little jealous, insecure. I've never been the most confident person. Emma was always the charismatic, beautiful one. I told myself I was overreacting. Then a few nights later, I couldn't stand it anymore. I followed her. I left my house after she said she had to pick up something from an office that closed late. I trailed her car, careful, I thought, making sure she wasn't onto me, and saw her pull into a neighborhood I didn't recognize. A sleek, black car pulled alongside hers. She got out of her car, met a man I didn't know. They kissed as though their lives depended on it, and then she opened the passenger door of her car and he climbed in. I froze. There she was, my wife, the woman I'd loved for over a decade, getting into someone else's arms. My chest tightened, my heart pounded, but I couldn't move. I watched her drive off in that man's car, so I followed again. Not proud of it, but I did. They went to a lowland hotel I'd never been to, just a few miles from our place. I parked down the road and watched. My mind was spinning. How long? How often? Has he been here before? Why didn't I see? Did she hate me? I sat there for what felt like hours. Then I stepped on the gas and drove home, hoping bizarrely that if she were still home, nothing would happen, that maybe it'd all evaporate by morning. She got home around 2 a.m. She stumbled in, put her keys down, and for a moment she looked as though she spotted me. Her eyes darted, then she shook her head, like she was annoyed by my presence, and went quietly to bed. I didn't say a word. I collapsed on the couch, numb, shaky, my brain overloaded with questions that felt impossible to ask. Morning came. She was sweet, normal, even as I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table, voice stiff. "Emma, can we talk?" She looked startled. "Of course. What's wrong?" I couldn't meet her eyes. "Were you with someone last night?" She tensed, hand frozen mid-sip. The silence was tidal. I just watched her. Finally she whispered, "Yes." That's when it hit me like a freight train. Everything I'd been denying. Everything I feared. I felt hollow and furious and heartbroken all at once. She didn't offer explanations, just said, "I'm so sorry." Her voice was small. I remember how devastating it was to see her like that. Our conversation wasn't cinematic. It was messy. She said she fell in love with someone else, that the man was in her office. She said they tried to resist, but feelings grew. She kept repeating, "I'm sorry. It doesn't make sense," as though that somehow minimized the damage. I asked how long. She said 3 months. I asked if it ever meant anything to her. She teared up and said yes, I meant everything. In the following days, my world fractured. I went to work, but I couldn't focus. Every design looked wrong, every color, flat. I walked down the street like I didn't exist. I found her phone pictures off, not obvious, not trashy, but tender. They'd taken selfies, messy hair, mornings, laughter. She looked happy. I stared until my vision blurred. I discovered hotel charges on our joint card and watched as she cried when she saw I found them. I tried to talk to friends, tried to talk to her. I begged for honesty. She confessed more. They weren't seeing each other just in work hours. They were traveling together for other work errands. They flew overnight a handful of times to meet clients. I found boarding passes. She said she went along to keep up appearances. I say to myself now that emotional betrayal hurt even more than the physical. But there's no hierarchy in this kind of pain. She wanted to make it right. She said she wanted us to try therapy, rebuild trust, proved that I was the one she belonged with. She said she loved me, but every time she reached for my hand, I flinched. Every morning, I woke up beside her and felt like I was lying there wearing someone else's skin. Our bed, once comforting, now felt like a stage where a betrayal had just happened. I did something impulsive. I mailed a note to the other man, describing the damage had done. I told him had broken my home, my trust, my friendship with a person I loved more than words allowed. I asked him to stay away. I signed it. No name. I don't know if he got it. Writing it felt powerful momentarily, but more than anything, it left me emptier. The turning point came when we sat across from a therapist with that first evening's session stiff with silence. The office was quiet. The therapist asked us each to talk about how we felt. When it was my turn, I was staring at my shaking hands. Thought I'd say nothing, but I said everything. The betrayal, the desolation, the anger, the desperation, the fear that I'd never feel whole again. Emma listened. She cried. And she admitted that she'd been lying to herself, too, that she'd been looking for something missing in our marriage, but she didn't realize how deep the missing was until she made a choice she'd never forgive herself for. The fact that she could say it out loud made me realize that maybe, healing was possible. The road ahead was jagged and unknown. We agreed to separate beds for now, to rebuild piece by painful piece. We told each other we'd do our best. Not sure it's enough. Not sure if the trust I once had can ever be recovered, or if I even want it to be fully recovered. Maybe a new version of us can emerge, or maybe this is how it ends. But in that office, with the therapist's neutral gaze, I felt a fragile hope we'd do more than just survive. I felt maybe, if we're honest, deeply honest, we might find a way back, different, scarred, but real. I don't know how this story ends. I don't know whether my love for her is enough, or whether my wounds are too raw. But I promise this. I'm no longer the same man who sat quietly on our couch last month. I'm a man broken, yes, but also waking up. And that feels like something. Something I'll cling to while we figure out whether we have a future, or at least who we even are separately, after all this. The days that followed were full of strange silences and small, loaded moments. Emma and I still lived together. We'd agreed to take things one day at a time. We both needed time to process, and it felt wrong to make sudden, irreversible decisions while emotions were still raw. So we coexisted. We made breakfast separately. She slept in the guest room. I kept my toothbrush in a different cup. These tiny rearrangements felt symbolic, like we were trying to give physical form to the emotional distance now stretching between us. And then came the questions I couldn't unask. Who was I now? Was I still her husband, or just a placeholder while she figured herself out? Was I supposed to forgive? Was that expected of me? Could I? Some nights I'd lay awake wondering if she was texting him. Even though she'd promised to cut off all contact, I couldn't help but imagine them still whispering in private. I hated what I was becoming, suspicious, obsessive, wounded in a way that made me ugly to myself. I tried talking to friends. Most didn't know what to say. One told me, you should leave. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Another said, if you love her, you have to fight for her. Nobody said what I really needed to hear, that it was okay to not know what the hell I was doing. That grief doesn't always come with a decision tree. Therapy helped, somewhat. It at least gave us space to unravel. I learned to talk without accusing. She learned to listen without defending. Some days we had breakthroughs. She cried and said she hated who she became. She admitted she'd felt emotionally invisible for over a year, not because I didn't love her, but because we both had started living parallel lives. She said she didn't know how to ask for what she needed. And I had no idea I'd stopped seeing her fully. Somewhere between our schedules and routines, I stopped showing up. One night, we stayed in session after the hour was up. The therapist allowed it. I told her, I'm not angry all the time. Sometimes I just miss you. She broke down. That was the night we hugged again, the first time in weeks. It was brief, uncertain, and neither of us knew what it meant, but it cracked something open. Later that week, she left a note on my pillow. You don't owe me anything. I know I broke something sacred, but you're still the best man I've ever known. If you can't forgive me, I understand. But I hope one day you'll remember us the way we were, before I lost myself. I sat holding that note for half an hour. I didn't cry. I felt something worse, a soft sadness that felt like it might last forever. The following weekend, I decided I needed space. I packed a bag and drove to a cabin my cousin owned a few hours north. I needed silence, away from her, away from the city, away from the memories tied to every coffee cup and pillowcase. I left her a message, not a conversation. I need time to figure out who I am without you. am not leaving permanently, but I need to breathe. She didn't reply for a day. When she did, it was short. Okay, I love you. It'll wait. That stung. Because despite everything, a part of me still loved her too. The cabin was quiet. There was no internet. I brought books I couldn't concentrate on. I wrote in a notebook. I walked in the woods. At night, I lay in bed listening to wind pushing through the trees and asked questions I didn't want to hear the answers to. What if we hadn't stopped trying 2 years ago? What if I had noticed her slipping away? What if she had just talked to me before stepping outside our marriage? But questions like that are poison. They offer no relief, only self-flagellation. Eventually, I began asking different ones. Do I still trust her? Can trust ever come back, even if I wanted to? Do I believe this version of us can be rebuilt? Do I want to rebuild it? By the end of the week, I felt a little clearer, but not certain. I returned to our apartment and she was there. She had cleaned the whole place, made dinner I didn't eat much, and tried to smile. I gave her a long look and said, I'm not ready to be husband and wife again, but I'm willing to keep talking. She nodded. She didn't ask for more. We went back to therapy. But this time, it wasn't about crisis management. It was deeper, more about ourselves. We explored childhood wounds, patterns of conflict avoidance, the way we both clung to comfort instead of truth. I admitted I'd been so terrified of conflict that I'd rather ignore problems than confront them. She admitted she'd learned to equate validation with attention, and when mine grew cold, she sought it elsewhere. There was one session where she brought in a letter. She read it out loud. It was a timeline, her infidelity from start to finish. Dates, feelings, key moments. It was brutal, but she didn't hold back. When she cried, I didn't reach for her. I just listened. When she finished, I thanked her. It was the ugliest gift anyone ever gave me, and the most honest. After that, something shifted. We started spending more time together, not as a couple, but as people learning to trust each other again. We cooked together. We went to a movie. We walked by the river and talked about childhood memories, not the affair. For a few hours, we remembered what it felt like to be us before all this. I wish I could say that fixed everything. It didn't. Sometimes I'd still see her smiling at nothing and wonder if she was thinking about him. Some nights I'd wake up from a dream where I was chasing her down a hallway that never ended. I still kept my things in the guest room, but the air was different now. Less bitter, more cautious hope. One night, we sat on the balcony. No wine, no distractions, just late summer air and the sound of the city humming below. She asked, do you think we'll make it? I answered, I think we could, if we want to, but I don't know if we should. That silence stretched long. Then I said, let's stop talking about forever. Let's talk about tomorrow. What would it mean to be kind to each other tomorrow? That became our new rule. No pressure for 10-year plans. Just be kind tomorrow. Then reevaluate. We've been doing that for weeks now. Small gestures, kind mornings, honest nights. And here's the thing I never thought I'd say. I don't hate her anymore. I hate what she did. I hate the version of myself I became in the aftermath. But I no longer look at her with rage. I see someone deeply flawed who still wants to do better. And I see my own flaws, maybe for the first time, without shame. Whether we stay together or not, I'm not sure. But I do know this, I'm healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but honestly. And if you're reading this, maybe you're in it right now, deep in the rawness. Let me just say this. It doesn't define you. The betrayal, the grief, the questions, they don't erase your worth. You're allowed to grieve, rage, break down. And you're allowed to not have answers. Forgiveness is not permission. It's not weakness. It's a choice, one you get to make, or not. I don't know if you'll ever forget what happened, but I'm learning to carry it differently. Not like a wound, but a scar. A story. A truth. And maybe that's what surviving looks like.